thanks very much for the introduction. I'm very excited to be here. A spectacular meal last night, which sort of was really refreshing because it's like what I do is quite extreme, and sometimes it's quite lonely when you're doing something so far out on your own. And I'm like, yes, there's somebody else that's doing these sort of mad ideas. I'm going to talk about Silo. Silo is it's a restaurant, coffee house, bakery, and brewery. And I describe it as a pre-industrial food system that generates zero waste. Now that's sort of like, sounds like a far out concept. It's not, it's very simple, very, very simple. I'm going to sort of get into what that means in a little while, sort of guide you through it. And I'm just going to start with the mission statement for Silo. At Silo, we choose to provide quality through purity, adopting a more primitive diet with techniques both modern and ancient. We choose food sources that respect the natural order, allowing them to be themselves without unnecessary processing. By creating everything on site from its wholest form, we can capture real food, and real food tastes better. So, as a chef, as a sort of creator of things, as a person who's deeply passionate about a whole bunch of things, the medium of a restaurant, coffee house, bakery, brewery is an ideal platform for me to start a conversation. So it's a platform for ideas. So Silo, I'm gonna sort of start with a bit of a story actually. So we've been open a year and a half, and as Per mentioned, it began in Australia in 2012, and it was this tiny little cafe, absolutely tiny, and it was just about zero material waste. Like how could we, in a hospitality environment, achieve, no bin? How do we operate without needing a bin? So that was the sort of objective, and it was simply about that. And it was a guy called Joost Bakker, a Dutch-born Aussie dude who is one of my best friends. He's my biggest sort of mentor, biggest inspiration, and just a genius. And he's an artist and a designer. He's not a chef. And I happened upon him once upon a time, and we became good friends. And he said to me, your sort of cooking style, leans towards sustainable. You've worked at St. John, which is all about nose to tail cooking. You've worked in Copenhagen. You've foraged everything. You're taking wild foods. You cook in a creative way, which sort of thrives off of that which hasn't been done before. I was like, oh, thanks. Yeah, cheers. So me and Joost joined forces, and in 2012 we opened Silo. It was a little cafe, and it was, I think, the world's first zero-waste restaurant. Well, I keep calling it a restaurant, but cafe, and it was great. It was great. And the idea of zero waste is actually super, super simple, like it should be. It's we deal directly with a source of everything. So directly from the farm, directly from the sea, directly from the wherever it's created, wherever it's born, it comes straight into the restaurant in a way which has no packaging. So there's lots of kind of cool, clever, innovative ways in which to receive goods. But again, it's super simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's only complicated because of this sort of industrialized food world that we live in, and all the laws and the bureaucratic nonsense that makes it a bit hard. But we've found ways around all of those trade routes and delivery systems. So there's no packaging. It sort of, just a quick note on that, it's funny that all of the places in which can provide this produce without a packet happens to be the organic farmers, the people, sort of clued into what's going on in the sort of bigger picture, ecologically, etc. And lo and behold, the sort of not so good organic processed food, they're the guys that, they don't care. I say, should I, not that I do ask them, but if I was to ask them, can you deliver me this directly to Silo without a packet, they'd be like, no, it's not worth my time. And it says a lot, I think. So we're dealing with all these amazing organic farming systems in our environment, which is now in Brighton, and then it was Australia. So it comes in, and we create the food from a very whole form. So one of the things I didn't mention is that because it's coming in without a packet, because of a lot of laws and rules, the food is wholer. So to get meat into the restaurant, I'm sure it's different in different countries, different laws, but in Australia and the UK, it was like meat has to be, sealed in a bag, or if it's the flesh is exposed to oxygen, it has to be sealed, or there's all these silly rules and laws. Not silly, but so basically, long story short, we have to get everything in a wholer form than you would typically. We buy all of our animals as the whole animal, because that way it's okay, because there's sort of the skin, the hide covers the flesh, and it's just a safe way to bring it in without sort of bacteria landing on it and whatever. But more so that's meat. But then fish is the same. Dairy was the sort of trickier one. To get butter in without a packet, that was quite a challenge. So we got in cream in a pail directly from this wonderful farm, and we made our own butter, and yogurt. We couldn't get yogurt because it came in a tub. So we got in milk we get these 25-litre drums of milk. It's very simple, and then we just pour it into a smaller jug to use it as and when, and it's very, very simple. But we make our own yogurt. Again, avoiding packaging, avoiding waste. And it was really interesting in Australia with Yoast. We didn't realise what we were tapping into, we were sort of just trying to work. We were trying to figure this all out, and again, it wasn't that difficult. The difficulty was everything changed. The whole behavior of a restaurant shifted somehow, and we were just trying to figure it all out, and it was so different. Our staff costs were particularly high because we were churning all the butter, and we were making all the yogurt, we were rolling all the oats, we were butchering whole animals. Everything was done from real scratch. A lot of people talk about cooking from scratch. This was extreme scratch. So that was what happened in Australia in 2012, and for family reasons, I came back to the UK. I'd been gone for, Per described it as a pilgrimage. I was gone for many, many, many years, going to all these sort of best restaurants in the world, people that sort of were doing something which sort of, captured my imagination, just something which stood out. It began, I think, a little bit sort of superficially. I wanted my CV to be like, oh yeah, he's worked at that place and that place and that place, but then it became quite quickly about the sort of ideas or ideals behind these sort of great minds in these great kitchens, and I kind of just cherry-picked the ones in which stood for something. They were original. And sort of absorbed. I didn't care about the recipes. I didn't care about, productivity or how many KPs they've got on. All I wanted to do was absorb, what made them tick. Why do they do what they do? And it was interesting. I learned a lot of great things. And I'd been gone for a long time and decided I had to go back to the UK, and did. And that was 3 years ago now, I think, and have set up Silo in Brighton. Now, I came back from this amazing little sort of sustainable utopia with all these brilliant minds in Melbourne who were all sort of thinking, ecologically. They were thinking about the future. They were particularly well regarded. They were sort of very successful people. I was sort of in this kind of group of. There was a lot of money in it. It was quite easy to get 20 grand compost machine, because this guy would be like, I so believe in what this guy's doing, here's 20 grand, buy a compost machine. But coming back to the UK, it was like slap with reality. It was hard. I was on my own, 27 at the time, I think, 26, when I came back, and I had no support. I had no, when I left the UK, I was just some young chef. So when I came back, it was just like, no sort of reputation, had no team, had bugger all money because I'd spent it traveling the world, and chefs, especially in the UK, don't get paid so well, so it was very tricky getting around the world on the wage that I'd sort of established. I was pretty broke, and again, the UK is slightly different to Australia in who wants to invest in what. And it wasn't easy, and spent a year and a half, something like that, trying to find a site, trying to find investment, trying to find people that believed in what I was saying. Whilst I'd done some great things in some great restaurants, and Silo in Melbourne was a success. It was very few people would take me seriously when saying, I've got this idea for it's like a zero waste restaurant, and it's gonna, we're gonna do what I describe as pre-industrial food, and I kind of met a lot of very blank looks, like, who the hell is this guy? Persevered, and eventually, I was looking in London because that was my sort of stomping ground as a young chef. I'd never been to Brighton, but happened to go down to the south coast of England to do just a very small talk on what I'd done in Australia, just to some students or whatever. And then it was total serendipity. It was walking back to the train station to leave forever, and I walked past this it's just like a back street in Brighton. It's there's no people that walk down it. It's a very quiet little street where a few people live on. But there was this old warehouse, this big, beautiful old warehouse, and I just thought, oh wow! And the logo actually is the outline of a flour mill, and that was a kind of key principle to the business, which I'll come on to. And I just literally walked past this window and I was just like, oh my God, I can see the flour mill there. It was like a weird flash image of, that's obviously not the mill, the real thing. Had it in my sort of mind's eye that, that'd look great there. Cavalier as I was, just thought, knock on the door. There was no to let sign. There was no sort of, this is for sale or this is to rent, nothing like that. It was just a warehouse that was empty. But I knocked on the door, and the guy who owns the building just happened to be there. It was really weird, sort of stars aligning, just sort of happened. And then, so that was I found the space, and then I was looking tirelessly for investment, which was very, 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 very difficult. And eventually, the conversation with the guy who owned the building went on and on and on for months and months and months. Eventually, he was like, I'll invest, I'll join you. It was only a very small investment, but I remortgaged my house eventually, and he said to me, right, if you put in the same as me, I'll put in, I'll invest. And I again, struggled to find the money, but remortgaged my house. So I own a house in the UK, and remortgaged just to get together. It wasn't a lot. It was like £30,000. And the whole of Silo was set up for 60,000, including a contingency, a sort of a float. I think we spent about 40 grand on the actual building, which is, as I'm sure most of you know, nothing when you're setting up quite a large restaurant. But we sort of just about got it over the line, just about. But then something I really want to tell you about in this little story is that when it was like sort of official, no, it was before it was even official actually, there was I don't know how it leaked out, but like, yes, I don't know how it leaked out, but yeah, apparently some journalist found out that it was maybe happening and wrote an article about it. And it was just like Britain's first zero waste restaurant to open in 2000 and whatever. And it wasn't like confirmed. Nothing was, definitely happening. But yeah, he decided it was. So then it was only a small kind of local Brighton article, and then it got picked up by a guy who wrote for The Independent. And and then literally within 48 hours, I sort of seized the opportunity. This guy from The Independent called me. I was just like, oh, so is this happening? I was like, yeah, it is. And even though there's loads that were still to be confirmed. So anyway, so he came down, took a picture, left on the train within like half an hour, and it all happened so fast. And he just had this one conversation on the phone, and the next day it was in the Independent newspaper that the Britain's first zero waste restaurant is going to open, and had this sort of article that this conversation that we'd had, and it spread like wildfire. It really did. I think that particular article was shared something ridiculous like 8,000 shares or something. It's crazy, and a lot of people read it. Anyway, I was like, oh God, what's going on? This is happening. Anyway, it's just like this article has radically changed so much, and the phone wouldn't stop ringing, emails pouring in, and it's just me. I was like terrified. What have I done? And then as you do, as I did, read through all the comments after this article, and you should never do that. You never read the comments. Well, and it was just like, hate. It's just so many people being so negative, so pessimistic about, what we were sort of saying, or what I was saying was going to happen. So anyway, there's this guy, and I wish to God, I sort of, when I saw it and felt as I did, I didn't think to make a note of it, but if there's one thing I could turn back the clocks and go back and save, I would have saved this comment. And I can't remember it word for word, but it was like, firstly, I'm an economist and an ecologist. This will fail. And I was like, oh God, reading it. And then he went into this massive, honestly, this guy must have spent hours writing this comment on this article saying why it will fail. He was talking about the scale. He was talking about production of whole foods. He was talking about waste. He was talking about the industrial economy. He really went for it. And he was just like, this will fail. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. It's just a hipster wanting to get attention or something. So anyway, I was reading that. I was like, fucking hell. Shit. Really, really scared by this guy. But, it was sort of too late. I had to sort of, I've laid an egg. It's going to happen. Just sort of persevered, I guess. And then Silo was born. And Silo, like I say, it's a restaurant, coffee house, bakery, and brewery. And looking back, it was amazing how naive I was. Sort of 27, and just because I'd done all right in a cafe, this was a completely different kettle of fish. And it's amazing how hard it is. I've kind of been thinking recently, as a percentage of the decisions I've made in this last 2 years, how many of them are right? It's like 50%. I made so many mistakes. But I say that sounds negative. The restaurant has been a huge success. Not only have we got lots of wonderful attention, wonderful reviews, articles, so many good things. Like I could talk all day about just what's happened since opening Silo Brighton, but yeah, it's sort of lessons learned have been done the hard way. That's absolutely for sure. And so yeah, there's all these things that sort of happened, all these things that I've tried haven't worked. Some things have, but it was a sort of a blind naivety, that sort of I'm painfully grateful for. It's like, if I'd have known how hard this was going to be, I definitely wouldn't have done it, definitely. But, I sort of kind of grit my teeth and think, well, it's pretty good, like some good things have happened, and what have come out of it, which we're going to talk about, some pretty far out ideas, which hopefully in the future is going to be the sort of first step towards something really good. So the other thing I just want to sort of mention to conclude the little story about this comment on The Independent was something I'm very open about. I think it's really important. So in 2015, which is our sort of first January as it were, we made a profit as a restaurant. So economically speaking, this guy particularly in this comment was like, this definitely will fail because it won't make money, And in our first year, with never having really tested this bloody thing, it made quite a considerable profit, which, it's all well and good. Like, I've got so many ideas to talk about, some sort of la-di-da, sort of like exciting, creative, inspirational things which have happened. But I think it's really important to address that this actually works. Like, there's, it's that sort of cold hard reality that, if it doesn't float within today's market, it doesn't matter. Like, go and have all these ideas and paint or draw and write, because if you want to do a restaurant and it's not going to succeed, then it's just it's a waste of time. So that is, I talk about, we've had a lot of success. We have, as an economic business model, it is despite this guy's negative, prediction, it is succeeded. And on our year, we had a year anniversary, 6 months ago, whatever. I was determined to, it keeps ringing in my head, this guy and what he was saying. So I was determined to project it. We have projectors in Silo to avoid paper menus. So we project the menu, and my thing was, in this 1 year anniversary, this big party we had, I was going to project all night would be this comment from this guy on the wall, this prediction about the failure of this idea. I was really wanting to project it, but he'd taken it down, the bugger. He'd taken it down. He's obviously remembered that he'd written something and gone back to it and taken it down, which, I have actually told this story once before, and somebody said, "Are you making that up just to, for dramatic effect?" I'm like, "No, I'm telling you." Thankfully, I did tell a lot of other friends and family to read it, and because I was stressed about it. So a lot of people other than me did read it. So I'm not making it up. And so that's the sort of the story, the sort of structure of the story of how this has all come to be. So now I'm going to just discuss some ideas. I'm actually working on a book. Now, the book has been in my mind before the restaurant was even in existence. And I'm sure you all know, there's a lot of cookbooks in the world, and a lot of them some are good, some are bad. And one thing that the behavior in which I sort of manage what I do is it's a little bit different. There's a term called red ocean, blue ocean. Red ocean it's like a business term. Red ocean is businesses which sort of sit and do the same sort of things. Maybe they'll tweak it a little bit, do it a bit different. They conform to the status quo. and that's the sort of analogy of sharks eating each other, the red ocean. And blue ocean is like totally, wipe away everything which is sort of, like suggested as the norm, as the status quo, and like, none of that matters. I'm going to do everything differently. I'm going to do everything in a way which sort of makes sense to me in this time and place. So that's, the sort of idea of blue ocean. And Silo is definitely a blue ocean business. Everything is different. But, not to be different, just because to me it makes sense. And a lot of those ideas are quite radical, and it does get a lot of attention, but it does work. So I'm going to start with the compost. So the urban compost. There's a lot of people on the planet, most of which are moving to the city, and I mean that as a sort of broader statement. So this sort of situation with urban, I'm sure we're all very sort of mindful and aware of these sort of issues, but the sort of way to deal with urban life and sort of being ecological with our decisions and responsible and ethical, etc. Compost, something which is sort of in your mind's eye. It's in a nice garden and there's a big heap and there's a guy with a fork and, that's the image. But like composting, the amount of waste we generate is predominantly in these urban environments. And so part of how Silo is zero waste, and I'm not sure I actually explained this very well, but yeah, we're dealing with the producer, and it's coming in to Silo. Every single material that comes into Silo can either be digested by us or eaten, or it's completely natural, organic, biodegradable, and will then go into our compost machine. So obviously Brighton's a city, it's a city centre location, and in the entrance of our restaurant we have a compost machine, which is like just a big metal box, basically. It just looks like a big stainless steel unit. It's pretty big. So what it does is it turns up to 60 kilos, depending on density, of organic waste into compost in one day. So in one day it will turn 10 times what we create in terms of like material waste into compost. Like, we do not touch the sides of this thing. So that's our sort of compost machine, and it works. It's quite a simple analogy. It works like our stomachs. It's a warm cavity in which has a microbial culture which digests the organic matter rapidly. It's heated, I think it's about 50 degrees, the compost, roughly. So every 48 hours, whatever goes in there, and I mean, pretty much anything, like we've fish bones, eggshells, lemon skins, and a lot in traditional composting, there's certain things you wouldn't put on there, such as lemons. This machine literally eats anything, and it's really, really special. So everything that comes into the restaurant is either eaten or goes into this machine. And obviously, we're clever about what we get in. It kind of goes with the territory to behave a certain way, to not waste. That would sort of defeat the point. Just because there's a compost machine, let's throw it in the bin. It's not like that. Obviously, we're very, very careful with every tiny little detail that goes in there. So we like I say, we do not touch the sides. We say to all the local restaurants, bring us your waste. Let's make the most out of this machine. We've got all these sort of. We do say we're quite specific. We say to the organic places, give us your waste. Otherwise, God knows what would go in there. But we create a lot of compost every day due to a sort of a community of people that put their waste into the machine. So just to talk about some other sort of ideas which sort of help the system. We have a unit, a machine in our basement which electrolyzes water. So it's a massive machine. It's massive, really big and clunky. It's not the prettiest thing, and it looks like some sort of droid from Star Wars. It's really, it's quite, looks very sort of low tech. And what it is a machine in which tap water goes through reverse osmosis. So the sort of smallest filter in the world, it's literally just water particles pass through. The grey water then flushes our toilet, so it's very cleverly plumbed into the building, in which the grey water from the reverse osmosis washes away the flush of the toilet. And then the actual water itself, the pure water particles, it goes through electrolysis, which is a really old sort of science, I'm sure you all know, in which it splits the bacteria, or should I say, it splits the pH of the water into extreme states of acid and extreme state of alkaline. And in those extreme states, bacteria cannot survive. It's just completely, or 99.999% of bacteria is completely eliminated from this water. Now, the machine then puts the water back together from the acid and the alkali back together, and sort of again then splits it into pHs which you can control. So we have a red and a blue, and the red is acid 0.5 something. The alkaline is like 8.2, something like that. You can set it within reason. And then basically, so this water is tap water. There is nothing added. There's salt, and that is it. Goes into this machine, just water on site, so no road miles or whatever, all on site, and it's turned, it's electrolyzed, and then this water is more hygienic than hand soap. So we use it to clean the whole building. There's loads of people very few people use this thing, but in Australia, where I learnt about this system, a lot of people wash food in it. It's completely natural, it's just water and salt. They, like a lot of chefs, I never really, because of the way I work, never really needed to do it, but a lot of chefs like portioned the fish and then dipped it in this water, and basically it just eliminates the surface bacteria, which prevents it from denaturing as a piece of fish, and would last 3 days longer apparently. I did taste it with, I was saying with my own eyes, but with my own palate. He said to me, this is, a chef in Australia was like, this is 4-day-old fish. He said, taste the difference, and it was impressive. Not that I promote having, old fish, but it was interesting. Anyway, but no, we just use it for cleaning. But what that means, and we've got a massive, it's not as big as this restaurant, but it's a pretty big restaurant, and we clean the whole bloody thing in this water. So there's no chemicals in silo, which is, I think that's pretty good. And then when you consider, because we could do zero waste solutions with cleaning products, there are companies now that are sort of mindful of that, and there are ways of doing it, but it's sort of not quite the point. If you think of the energy, you think of road miles, you think of, what's gone into creating those products in Timbuktu, God knows where, and then it all sort of comes together and comes to silo. Maybe there's no packaging on that thing, but it's not the point. Whereas this thing, firstly, it's completely natural. It's all done on site, so there's no moving around of anything, and it also it's totally cost effective. It's essentially it's tap water, which we would only use to clean anyway. So it's just 2 in 1. So that's our water. Now we also have a special taps in the customers' toilets. So it's just like this. It's not the prettiest thing again, but I don't care. Put it in the customers' toilets, and you sort of put your hands, and there's sensors, and it spits out like a certain solution to wash your hands. It's like a 20-minute cycle, and it goes from, oh God, I keep forgetting, acid to then alkaline, again, specially formulated to wash your hands. And then it finishes with neutral, pH 7. And so, this 20-minute wash hand thing. And it is hilarious gauging customers that do this, because we don't, one of the things at Silo is we don't have too much information. We just sort of get on with it. And in the bathrooms, people are like, "What the hell is this?" There's no sort of soap or whatever, and it's just like you're forced into using this machine, and it's like whoa, and there's all these lights, and it looks quite.
They have to spend 20 minutes washing their hands.
20 seconds. Did I say minutes? Oh, bloody hell. No, 20 seconds. My apologies there. That would be weird. So 20 minutes. So yeah, 20 seconds washing their hands. And yeah, so yeah, it's good kind of engagement with this sort of idea, because people are like, what the hell is this? Some people are like afraid of it. It's going to burn the hand, because it says acid and alkali on it. But, I'm going to burn my hands off. So they don't. But yeah, so that's we call it Jesus water. That's what it's known as at Silo, Jesus water. But yeah, it's the electrolyte, because electrolyzed oxidized water is a bit of a mouthful. So we just call it Jesus water. So some more ideas with Silo. So we're a coffee house. Coffee's not very local. We're sort of, again, goes with our territory to be local. But again, that is what it is. It's a coffee house. I fell in love with the coffee culture in Melbourne and decided that I wanted to own a coffee house because I love it. And so obviously coffee houses are just everywhere, and it's booming, and it's an unstoppable business force. It's going to happen. And again, I was mentioning like this whole urban conundrum, how do we make the world sustainable in an urban environment? And in a similar sort of frame of mind, people are going to want coffee, people are going to want chocolate, in the Western world, etc. And so am I going to ignore those sort of ingredients, those sort of offerings, as a sort of a restaurateur, owner of a coffee house, bakery and brewery? Or shall I use or apply myself and some imagination to this industry and just make it better? And which, I'm doing my best. And so with coffee, we have, just on the whole zero waste thing, we have some really clever ideas with zero waste coffee, because as I'm sure a lot of you know, that the coffee is packaged in a way which, there's sort of no air gets to it. So it's in these special foil bags with valves that only let oxygen out and not in, so it doesn't denature, or, the quality of the coffee doesn't diminish. So you think, how do you get around that? So we've got these coffee vacs, and it's like when you pump a wine, it's like a container with the same principle in which it pumps the air out. So it's just a solid container in which, from the roastery, it goes into the container and it pumps the air out, so it keeps it fresh. I could be very sort of like zero waste and just get it in a tub and no dramas, but the quality is gonna sort of deplete, and I, of course, don't want that. So yeah, that's a really interesting technique or trade method with the whole zero waste in mind. But yeah, with coffee, so there's a boat called the Tres Hombres, and the Tres Hombres I lovingly describe as a pirate ship. It's a bunch of, again, Dutch. There's a lot of Dutch people in my Silo world. There are a bunch of Dutch pirates that I met in Copenhagen about 4 or 5 years ago. And when I say pirates, I'm telling you, these guys look like pirates. They've got shaggy hair and loose clothing and tattoos and just sort of, and they make rum in the Caribbean. So yeah, they very much fit the stereotype of a pirate. And they have the boat, the Tres Hombres, which is a cargo ship. It has no sort of electricity. There's no fossil fuels moving that thing. It is just the wind. And basically, they're a bunch of hedonistic voyagers who go around the world finding organic, delicious, incredible produce with a bit of a story, and they basically, they trade with these products. And later I'm sort of talking about this whole pre-industrial thing, and sort of the pre-industrial thing's more so about the food, but in trade, that's is particularly pre-industrial way in which to receive goods. And coffee. Going back to the coffee house, so we get all of our coffee and all of our cacao from the Dominican Republic. It's an organic farm. Really amazing what they're doing over there. And it's coming into England on a boat, just using the wind to get it to the UK. So yeah, I'm particularly proud of that sort of established relationship. And then just to how am I doing for time? Where's Per gone?
I'm here.
Are you there? Sorry.
Yeah, go on for a few more minutes. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Right, yeah.
All right. I described the menu at Silo as reactional. So in terms of like when you deal with sustainable issues, there's so many sort of go-to buzzwords that people associate with like being sustainable, and there's an obsession, kind of a good thing, but it shouldn't be an obsession with localism. So, the sort of idea everything has to be local, and that's the sort of go-to thing. And, Silo is extremely local, minus coffee from a pirate ship. But yeah, a reactional menu. So basically, what I do with the menu is, firstly, with our direct trade, I drive every Monday morning to all of our organic farms in the sort of surrounding areas of Silo. So I go in a van and I pick up 200 to 400 kilos of vegetables and a whole animal. From these incredible organic farming systems, and bring it back to Silo. And I do that for a number of reasons. It makes sense financially. It sort of works out about, £100 cheaper a week. It means that I get the pick of the crop, the best of the best. It's coming straight out of the soil on the morning. They pick it that morning, and it's the best of the best. And but the thing that I do it for, without questionably the most, is understanding the whole system of food, or at least food in my little world. So like the whole story, the whole kind of production of these ingredients, and all the way to a plate of food for one of our customers, I sort of see it all. I can gauge it and understand it. And it is quite amazing how your end product changes due to the process. So to give you an example, there's a farm in which I drive to, and it's one of our biggest vegetable suppliers. And literally just the other day, she was saying, we've got broad beans on the way about another month. And she was pointing at this bush. I'm like, obviously I couldn't see tiny little bean pods, but there's this massive, luscious-looking green bush. And I was just like, what do the leaves taste like? And she's like, I don't know. I was like, all right. You don't know. So I picked a sprig of these broad bean leaves, and it was absolutely incredible. They were just so delicious, the sort of tips of these broad beans. And she's like, I never would have thought to do that. It's kind of crazy. You've got this big, luscious green bush, and you never thought that's food. So it's just something so simple. It's just been missed she's been doing it for 45 years, and she's never thought to eat the rest of the bush. So it's interesting kind of when those two people meet, the chef and the farmer, and really sort of get into the nitty-gritty of it. What changes, how it changes the whole kind of production. It's really interesting. And another sort of reaction. This is a kind of like quite an extreme example, but like in Sussex, there's a particular kind of soil, and this particular kind of soil lends itself particularly well to growing swede, and swede is amazing. I love swede, but I never really see it in a restaurant, chefs just think it's like pig food or whatever, but it isn't. It's of course incredible, and everywhere in Sussex, every single one of the vegetable producers, farmers, say to me, do you want some swede? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll have some swede. And then they go to the next one and like, do you want swede? And then literally all of them have loads and loads of swede, mountains of these big boulderous swedes. And, I just can't, everywhere I go, swede. And so I did this dinner a few weeks ago, and it was like quite a big collaboration with another local restaurant. And I'm really pushing this idea of like a reactional menu. So I'm reacting to my environment. And in a kind of a humorous way, they're all telling me to use swede. They've got so much of it, and nobody wants to eat this swede they all have, and it's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. I'm going to use it. And it was 3 particular farms in which we had swede from. And so on this dinner, I did a dish of swede and Swede. That's how it read on the menu, Swede and Swede. And it was this, I wish I had a picture of that. And it was, this very sort of elaborate, creative dish of, I've got this Japanese mandolin and rolled out these massive sheets of Swede, which were, because it's so fine, the Swede was so big, the sheet of Swede could have wrapped our restaurant up. It was that big and long. And we sort of seasoned the whole sheet and then rolled it back up into these like big roulards, steamed the whole thing, cut them into these sort of psychedelic swirls. They're so fine, so many layers, and then just sort of gently pan-fried it so it's golden and crispy. Then served it with, I'd made a broth. It's more of a sauce. It is quite viscous, quite thick, but it was made from dehydrated swede that I've rehydrated in water. And it like basically flavored, all the flavor from this dehydrated swede went into this liquid, and it was just this beautiful, sweet and sour and rich, kind of raw swede flavor, and it was absolutely divine. And then we had fermented swede, and it was this dish of swede, and served it to all these guests who were there that night, and whilst the dish was delicious, it fell a bit flat on its face. It didn't. People were just like, didn't get it, which I found a real shame. I was quite gutted because I thought it was so clever and it was really delicious, but they were just like, why is this guy serving Swede? So maybe a bit too ahead of myself on that one.